Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Intro to D&D panel. I'm so excited to be here with a bunch of really lovely folks, and we're so excited to get into some D&D action. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Alicia. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the annual giving officer here at Salal. To start us off, of course, I want to do a land acknowledgement to express my gratitude for being able to live and thrive on these lands. I personally am joining in from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Coquitlam people. Very, very grateful to be here on this beautiful land. And Salal works primarily on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Thank you very much for joining me today and tuning in from wherever you are. To get us all started, I'd also like to talk about a little bit about Streaming for Survivors and what this event is and why we're all here today. So Streaming for Survivors is Salal's biggest annual fundraising event. It spans a whole week. We are towards the end of this action-packed week. And we're all aiming to raise $80,000 for Salal's life-saving services, everything from crisis care that's available worldwide to support services through counseling, both individual and support circles. And then we also offer things like hospital accompaniment services. So for folks who need medical support post-assault, you never have to go alone. Someone from Salal will join you. So yeah, really wonderful event, great cause to be here, and can't wait to dive into some D&D goodness. I'm going to pass it off to you, Lauren. I would love to get you to introduce yourself and then go from there.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Lauren Urban, she, her. I am currently the content manager over at Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. I also do a lot of D&D and TTRPG streaming in general, both as a game master and as a player. And I'm really happy to be here. That's how I'm going to end it. And I will send it over to V.
Hi, everyone. I'm V Muse. You can find me pretty much everywhere as V Muse, but there might be an underscore in there somewhere floating around. Just saying. I am the partner and talent manager at Codename Entertainment, the makers of Idle Champions. I'm also a pro DM and player, as well as professional mini painter, and very much looking forward to having our chat today. And let's see, I'm going to pop this over to Carolyn.
Hello, I am Carolyn Page. I'm a streamer, I'm a gamer, I'm also an actor and comedian. You can find me doing lots of D&D stuff in your ears with the Many-Sided Media people and on My First Dungeon. And oh, you can find me at Jacuzzi Tubs with 2 B's on all social media. And I'll pass it over to Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian. Pronouns are he, they. You can find me on the internet pretty much everywhere as Urban Bohemian. I am also a streamer, gamer, longtime D&D player, have been in a few actual long-running actual play series, a lot of one-shots. I can still consider myself a professional GM. Technically, yes, but I don't ask me, I'll cry. And just love playing the game. So yeah, very happy to be here.
So thank you all so much for joining me. Let's dive right into it. Starting off real strong. What is D&D? I'll open it up to the floor if anyone is passionate to answer this question. It's kind of a big question. No pressure. But yeah, what is D&D?
D&D was started by Gary Guy.
I was going to say, do you want the technical
Somebody's
or do you
got
want
the
like
history. Yeah,
The
okay.
Webster's Dictionary defines
Oh, there it
Dungeons and
is.
Dragons.
Right.
Doo-doo-doo.
I think D&D is the spirit of D&D is really a game of collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, often
Yeah.
with both Dungeons and Dragons in it.
But sometimes not, and it's okay if they're not there.
It's
Mhm.
okay
Yeah,
if they're
sometimes
not
neither.
there.
But yeah. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Actually, I've rarely encountered a dragon in. I think GMs are like scared of the dragon because it's so
Oh, no.
big.
I had
It's a
to.
little too on the nose.
Right, right.
Well, and I realized that at one point I very specifically put a dragon in a dungeon just to make it happen because I realized that same thing. I'm like, I don't know if I've ever encountered a dragon in a dungeon. Oh, I guess I
Right.
got to do this now. So I
Not
think
a nice place to live. Why would they be in there? You know,
Right?
it's that.
everybody's got a different way that they want to do their lair, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I totally agree with it's a storytelling vehicle. I think there's a lot of TTRPGs out there that do collaborative storytelling in a bunch of different ways. And so D&D is just kind of the framework that this game helps tell, usually epic storytelling, but it's flexible enough to kind of be able to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it is partly a game of chance because you add the dice into the play of it. So you might want to try and do something, but the dice may say, haha, you thought, because you roll a bit lower than you were hoping to. And there's also some strategy in terms of how you set up your characters and everything like that. So it appeals to both like the very, technical, mathematically inclined because you get to play around with the stats and everything like that. But it also very much appeals to the very creative and off the cuff and improvisational types who like to just see what the heck is going to happen this week. And the cool thing is it brings a bunch of different people together for one cohesive purpose. And that's, like everyone's saying, to tell a story and play this game together.
You talking about the dice, it's like and maybe I want to amend my original definition is it's more of an emergent narrative. It's like
Yeah.
finding a story together, but the dice, the RNG of it all is where the emergent narrative comes, and that's always so fun. Like rolling a nat one, there's nothing more fun in the game than rolling a nat
Mm.
one, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can be as supported as you want. I mean, like the math is a big thing. It's for math geeks too, because
Mm-hmm.
you kind of the numbers that you pick help define in
Mm-hmm.
broad terms what your character is good at, what they're not good at. But as you're telling a story, the dice are sort of that other narrator like on your shoulder to say, "Oh, I would like to do this." And perhaps you roll and the skill check is not so great or it's great. So, yeah, that element of chance is also what makes it a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big agree on that element of chance. It keeps everything very exciting. And constantly needing to be creative too. I think that's why I love D&D is because it kind of pushes me to explore my character within the realms of like what I've rolled and what the story is, which is a very unique and exciting challenge. Awesome. Um, Kind of going off, I think I'd like to expand a little bit more on the whole storytelling aspect of it. How do you play? Like what is a campaign? How are characters made? How do you approach making characters? All that good stuff.
Okay, I always start off with a voice.
Ooh, fun.
I've heard V talk about this before, and yes, she always starts with a voice. I generally start with I sometimes don't have much inspiration, so I sometimes start with a book or comic or sci-fi trope that I like and kind of flavor that into the fantasy world.
Oh, I
If we're
love that.
if we're talking about being a player, I'm the person who tries to find the thing that's missing in the group and fill that niche, which does make it a little bit frustrating for me to like sit around waiting for everybody else in the group to kind of pick some stuff. But I really enjoy going, oh, we have a this, and a this. It looks like we're missing someone who could do A, B, and or C. And that kind of narrows my focus enough that then from there I can get some inspiration. So I'm really I'm I'm enjoying it the best when I can play off of what other people are already doing and complement.
I love
I,
that full party approach.
yeah. It sounds like we should get a campaign going. It's very fun.
It'll be
Um,
fun.
I think for me, I always start similar to V, like I always start with a backstory. Like that always it's like, oh, do I want to play this like put upon orphan or like someone who's really snobby or like yeah, maybe like there's always like a personality or like kind of a character
Mm-hmm.
archetype that I
Yeah.
always comes to me that I am drawn to in the moment.
Yeah. Like when I say voice, I don't mean like different voices, because yes, I do different voices when I play characters, but literally how they speak in my head. This is going to sound fun. How they speak in my head, the things they would say, their personality as it comes across. I'm like, okay, so I have this person who is bubbly, absent-minded, gregarious, enthusiastic. How would they fit into a class? How would they fit into a race? And that's sort of what starts guiding me. Um, and then by the time I'm done creating the character, yes, there is a specific voice, uh, personality that comes through when I play the character. But the voice is really, how they would interact and how they would speak without, accents and everything like that. So you don't have to use voices to play D&D. I want to make sure that's very clear. You can use the same voice for every single dang character you're playing. That is totally cool and totally fine. When I say voice, I mean like the inside voice and how they interact is really what it comes down to for me.
Mm.
And I love the fact that all of us have just talked about different ways that we approach creating a character, because I think that really highlights that there is no one approach. And however you get that kind of inspiration, that's all that really matters. I know with brand new players who haven't maybe even played TTRPGs at all, the Brian had mentioned kind of looking at the book and going through that, and maybe some inspiration from some other media. I find that's usually the best starting point for them, because they don't have the experience of shared storytelling. But maybe when they're flipping through the pages of the player's handbook, they see the rogue and go, "Ooh, that looks cool.
Yeah.
What's that all
Yeah.
about?"
Yeah. I think finding a character from pop culture, like when I'm playing with people who are new to the game, I just started for my first dungeon. We're working on a new season now. And one of the players came in and said, "I want to be cousin Greg from Succession," but in this, but we're doing set in kind of a
Incredible.
Regency era. And so I just think that's such a funny like place to start. Like this pop culture character that you want to play, you want to embody, do it. You want to be Jessica Rabbit in like, but a paladin, like that's great.
Oh, as a paladin? That's so cool. I
Right?
want to
I
see
would
that.
love that. Yes. Okay.
Okay,
All right,
we
yeah,
have our
yeah.
setting for our campaign.
We do.
We're ready.
We do.
Toontown's in danger.
That would actually be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
it would.
Oh,
We're all
yeah.
thinking it. Okay, we'll offline.
Okay,
Mhm.
what is a paladin?
Oh, so
Ooh.
a paladin is a character that in general has some oaths, some tenets that they abide by. And so that's kind of the flavor of their character. They've come up with these list of rules, or they've been decided to follow a list of rules, and they're going to embody that in their life. As far as mechanics go, they tend to be tanky with a little bit of magic. So your frontline tanks with big swords and can do a little bit of magic and a little bit of healing. And those are kind of the broad archetypes. Sometimes they are associated with a deity and sometimes not.
Yeah,
Sounds
they're
kind of
kind of like a holy knight, like
Yeah.
a real
Yeah.
Sir
Mhm.
Arthur knight.
Or like, hall monitors, and depending on the interactions they have that day, they can go in very different
They do have
directions.
that orange badge. They
Yeah.
got the whole thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. They are the no. Like they're the mom. Sometimes they're like, no, no.
Hmm. Okay. Good to know. I'm fairly like a new D&D player myself, and I've come up with a character who is um a monk and I
Ooh.
think an acolyte
Mhm.
and half elf.
Ooh.
I'm not entirely certain what those things mean. Anybody have any insight?
Ooh.
I got paladin. Someone want to get half elf monk?
I'll take the half elf. The half elf is basically, it refers to basically an elf and someone else got together and they had a baby. And this is your half elf. So you get some of the qualities from elven kind, and you get some of the qualities from, the other human, essentially. So I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's things like, I think they have dark vision, right? Half elves still have dark vision.
I definitely have that.
So you can see in the dark. And then there's other attributes that are carried on because of the fact that you have this dual ancestry bloodline thing going on for your character. So that comes into play for half elf. The same thing is applicable for half orc type of thing. And whenever there's a half something, that's sort of the rule of thumb. It's half of whatever the final word is.
Gotcha. Okay, so from my understanding, it sounds like paladins are kind of like classes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, paladin would be a
Yep.
class.
Paladin's a
So
class.
Okay.
So is a monk.
A monk is a class, orc is a
Yep.
class, all that good
Orc
stuff.
is a no.
Orc
Orc
is-
is
Orc is a
yep.
species.
yeah. Some
I
of them will
in
use
general-
use race, but
Yeah. I in
yeah,
general
so
prefer species because I just like it better.
Species and lineage are kind of the
Lineage is
two
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that I've been
Um,
gearing towards. And yeah, so basically your lineage is who you came from, who your family is, and your class is who you are and what you want to do with your life. It's kind of
Yeah.
those two
Mhm.
things. And then you talked about being an acolyte. That's a background, which helps define what you have done already, where you have come from. So those
wow.
three pieces are often kind of the best way that the shorthand to describe the character that you're playing, so that people can kind of get kind of the basic broad, oh, this is kind of what you're looking to do. And then there's a lot more specifics to get into, but those are kind of the big ones.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's like
it's sort of
it's
yeah,
kind
it's
of like,
basically
oh, sorry, B, go ahead.
no, it's think of class as your job profession. Think of whether you want to say species or race, depending on the lingo being used at your table. That is your family tree. And then when it comes towards, the titles like acolyte and that type of thing, that's your specialization in your profession, in your job, is the way it
Gotcha.
sort of lines up. Just
So
to
yeah,
kind of give some
Okay.
modern day context for people who might be getting into the game.
Yeah.
it's a lot of who am I, where have I come from, what do I do, those initial things, and yeah, those three things make it very easy because you may be completely new to the game and you don't know what you want to be or do. So instead of necessarily starting with your lineage or your species, you may say, okay, well, I want to be a martial artist, like you said, monk. Monks are generally that martial arts stereotype. They use simple weapons, or mostly they just use their fists and their feet. And there are a lot of different types. Like I just love reading monk. I've never played one, but I love like reading all the different types of monks out there. And you can play that and think of like your classic monks from literature and pop culture, or the fun thing about it is you can put your own spin on the personality. Once you've decided your class, which is all the things that you can do, and you've decided your background, which does that nice twist on, it just adds a little flavor to who you are. Then, you could be stoic, you could be silly, you could be introverted, shy, like all of those things. And that's almost like the next thing is once you've got, okay, here's my race, here's my class, here's my background. And we talked earlier about creating characters. Like, okay, so what are all these things in your head saying, all right, well, who is this person? What are they all about? What's going on?
Wow, you're really
Yeah,
like
you can
creating a whole life.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
is. And I mean, I've seen a table where it's been like 3 elf rangers. They were all different. They were all so
That's
very
so
different.
fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That actually gets to be fun sometimes when you've played for a while, put together like everybody's gonna play a cleric, but because of their background and their lineage and their subclass and like the other things that they've picked around they're completely different characters.
Yeah.
And so yeah, those building blocks, they usually give you two things. They give you mechanical stuff, the numbers that are fun to watch go up, and story-wise stuff, ways to shape the who you are and how you want to portray this individual. So every time you pick that, you kind of get two things in one. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's so interesting. When I first approached character development, I kind of approached it like, who would I want to be in another life in this alternate universe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think my character is a little bit close to home, but I love the idea of using it as a form of expression, kind of exploring like an alternate, what's the word I'm looking for? Alter ego. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the context of the event we're hosting, Streaming for Survivors, I'm also questioning now whether it might be a really fun like role-playing healing tool too. That's kind of a
Yep.
half-baked idea, but I think that would be
No, it's actually, there's been
Great
tons of
idea.
research. There's tons of books on
Oh,
this. I know, honest to God, people who make a living off of exploring TTRPGs and therapeutic means. So it's definitely something that is out there and being put to use with great results, quite frankly.
that's so cool.
There's a saying that is kind of going around, which is D&D is not therapy, but it can be therapeutic. And it's that idea of people create characters that often intentional or not, include aspects of themselves that they either want to see or want to express or want to have more of, or paths that they want to go on. And oftentimes that can be rewarding in a bunch of different ways. And sometimes it's an intentional thing. Oh, I would like to get better at listening to other people, and so I'm going to create this character and do that. And then sometimes you create a character just for fun, and 5 or 6 sessions in, go, oh, I didn't know I wanted that, but now that I'm doing it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The important thing, oops.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the important thing is that if you're approaching D&D to play the game, remember your dungeon master is not your therapist, and your fellow players not your support group. If it is something you want to explore in a therapeutic fashion, do your research, communicate very well with everyone at that table, and make sure everyone's on the same page for intent and what they hope to get out of the game session, because you don't want it to turn into an inadvertent therapy session and cross people's lines and boundaries as a result.
Absolutely.
I think a great way to use it as a tool for this is kind of like the fake it till you make it. Like if you're, I feel like a lot of players, like if you're maybe not super comfortable in like big social scenarios or whatever, you decide to play like a halfling who's like nothing but gregarious. It's really fun to like role play as that. Or if you're like worried about, oh, I don't think I'm very attractive, and you play like the hottest elf that ever walked the earth, like it's fun just to step into that role. And sometimes you try it on and you're like, oh, this fits. Like I am hotter than I thought. I am a hot elf, I think it's just fun to know and experience within yourself that you have the capacity to be something that maybe you didn't think you were. And I think that's very therapeutic. Yeah.
I think and a lot of that can come out, a lot of that can just be you working through that in your own head at the table. Because like all of us are actors at the table, I think. But that's not necessarily how anyone has to play. Carolyn makes a really good point about making characters that maybe have things that you want to explore or question, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to embody that, although it is fun if you're comfortable and you're with a group that you're comfortable with doing. But you can still just add elements to your character's backstory, or sometimes if your character doesn't even have a backstory, just their motivations like going forward, that like I think all of us, there's always a little part of us in our characters for the most part. And I've definitely had moments where I realized, oh, this is what I was doing when I made this character, and I didn't realize that until 10 sessions on. I'm like, oh, okay, let's explore that. But yeah, I think it can be really fun to just, step into like another pair of shoes, and maybe, and here's the other thing is, maybe that character you create has nothing to do with yourself at all. Maybe it's just you had a great concept and idea, and you're like, let's see if I can make this work with this system. And you play and you just sit around and have a fantastic time with your friends. That's 100% great too.
It really sounds like there's no wrong way to approach D&D.
That's so true.
Pretty much if everybody's having fun at the table, you're doing it right.
Yes.
That part.
I think also I've had friends who've had a really great experience with exploring different gender identities, different like parts of that spectrum with D&D. If you, are curious about that, I think like step into the role of who you might think you want to be. That's very fun too, and you'll probably learn something about yourself, and you'll definitely have fun.
And I think one of the other broad things, and one of the main reasons I love playing D&D, is it with most of the stories that we tell in D&D, they are the heroic adventure. You are the people out to be good and change the world and make everything a better place. And sometimes in our real life, we can feel like that is impossible to do. And so being able to sit down for a little while and feel like your choices really matter, and that you can be that quote unquote knight in shining armor, or the monk with really cool fists, or the cleric healing people, or whatever it is very just satisfying and gratifying. And that can even go as far as like I'm going to play a game in where we're just going to go into a dungeon and there's a whole bunch of really nasty monsters and we're just going to make sure that there are no more monsters and we're going to find cool loot. Like, it doesn't have to even be a really deep story. It can just be a vehicle to be able to feel empowered, basically.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. There is no better feeling than being the person who, like, beats the final guy or the final alien, actually. Never fighting other people. It's always aliens, like weird worms and owl bears and stuff. Nothing feels better than being the person who, like, lands that final blow. So I agree.
Yeah.
Kind of, I really like what you said, Carolyn, about the kind of using your character to explore other gender identities and stuff like that. I think I would like to get into talking about how D&D is a tool, has been a tool for exploration for so long, but the community has a history of kind of being pigeonholed into, one type of person playing. This is a pretty diverse group of folks here. What would you like to see from the community to make the game more inclusive?
I'd like to see the grandfathering out, or that's not the right term, the phasing out of the term race. Like, I think it's just doesn't serve or mean anything in the context. Like, I think species, or what did you call it? Lineage?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like lineage because that's also a fancy word. That's like a more evocative word.
I will also say, I'm pretty sure I did not come up with that. Someone else used that, and it's just, so I cannot take credit for it.
Yeah. And especially because it is just, it's just part of the game's mechanics. It's another aspect of the mechanics of putting together a character. So yeah, changing that word, while there are some, long-standing players that get upset when you try to change anything, it doesn't actually affect your gameplay.
Right. Yes. Right.
I laughed because we all sort of paused when you asked about that, because I think all four of us usually sit at tables and are in groups that are fairly progressive and diverse, and so it was, we're like, it's already pretty okay.
Yeah.
But we're also I'll speak for myself. I'm very lucky being able to do the performative D&D, playing D&D, but for an audience, in where you're asking, what can the community do? Well, part of that is, as a community, we're making sure that when we are performing D&D in front of an audience, that we have a diverse group of people, that we show that everybody is welcome at this table, as much as you can with the 4 or 5, 6 people that you have available. And the more that has happened over the last couple of years, the more that actual plays have become a place in where people can not only see what D&D is and kind of watch it, but they also see people that look like them, people that look like other people they know. And so there's no longer, or hopefully soon, no longer that hesitation of wanting to play, but going, is this really for me? So I think that's because that has been a very important part of the streamer TTRPG community. That's helped a lot. I will also speak for myself, saying I have also been off stream, at those tables, and where I am the only femme presenting person, or I am the only. So yeah, it can be a little rough sometimes. But it is nice to feel like it's nice to perform and have people go, oh, I want to do that, and not have to worry about what they look like and what they think they need to do.
I love that.
And it also helps, like, tapping into the community itself. I know it helps for people to see others sharing their tables or sharing their stories, sharing their experiences, because the more you get oh my gosh, you'll never believe what happened in my game this weekend. And then it's like, this long poster thread about the game itself, that becomes something for people to realize, wait, this is just some average person playing this game at their house with their buddies, and they're having this much fun. Oh, wait, they have interests like I do because I follow them on this social media platform. Hold on, maybe this is something I can do. So while we do have the privilege of being in a more, public facing aspect of D&D and playing it for audiences and everything like that, the community itself is also doing a great service by sharing the stories about their games, by sharing their stories about how they came up with these characters, by making it personal and personable for others who are following them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That actually leads me into my next question of how has D&D expanded your community? Because I feel like, prior to the mainstreaming of streaming as a platform and as a career, D&D was kind of something that you played in like, stereotypically in your dad's garage with your five best friends from high school, So I'm really interested to hear about how D&D has shaped your life and your career and expanded your community and your network, all that good stuff.
That's a lot. That's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
For context, I mean, I came to D&D later on in life, started out in life as a, diligent Roman Catholic schoolgirl. So quite frankly, I didn't know what D&D was until I got to college. But now I can honestly say that I have literally friends across the world who I adore and think the most of. And I get to tell stories with people on a weekly basis. And I am lucky enough that the job that I do is tangentially related to D&D and the people who are part of it. Did I think I was going to be here? Absolutely not. Is there a formula to it? Heck no. Everyone's going to have their own path and their own story, much like their own characters, quite frankly, when you play the game. But D&D has played a huge part in helping me expand my horizons in terms of the people I get the pleasure of interacting with, but also what I can expect of myself as an individual and my goals and my hopes and my dreams, quite frankly.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, D&D is not just a game. It's, a whole life, like you said. Wow.
I it's it is a huge question, especially for those of us who've been fortunate enough to get into this as a career. I'll say one small aspect that I've seen that has grown and made this more popular, more mainstream. I come from the classical music world. I'm a professional oboist by trade. Classical music is not the most free form of art forms. And also the classical music world is, especially Western classical music, we have our own issues that we're trying to deal with as far as encouraging people to come on in and join us. And it's been interesting over the last 20 years, 25 years, because I'm that old, in where if I showed up to rehearsal and I wore a geeky t-shirt, there were strange looks. There was confusion. But way more recently, I will show up in a D&D t-shirt and I will have during the break people come up to me and go, "I saw you were wearing that t-shirt. Do you play? I know someone who's been interested. I've got my child who's interested. I am interested, and I just don't know where to." And then it's become a thing that is no longer a thing that people feel like they can't express, that they can't be a fan of, that is somehow a bad thing. And so when they see the D&D logo, they feel empowered to come up and ask about it. And that feels really good.
Yeah, that feels like a sense of accomplishment to be like a nice connection for someone to, like a gateway to the world.
The more people I can bring into the hobby, the better. I'm sorry.
It's definitely like a nodal network thing. Like every time I've gone into a game, you always leave with like a new friend who you'll maybe hang out with outside of the context of the game, and then stuff like this, like meeting other players for the first time and other GMs for the first time. It's so exciting, and it's like the ultimate icebreaker because you always have, a million things to talk about, like, oh, what class are you playing? What do you want to play next? And it's just such an easy way to expand your community. And for me, like, I've always been a nerd at heart, but growing up, I didn't have people in my community who are interested in that stuff. So that was kind of a part of myself that I just kept for myself. And then now, as an adult, the past, 6 years where I've really been doing this professionally, it's like, it's a great way to make friends as an adult, which can be very hard to do. So yeah, that's my answer.
No, I like I definitely have made way more friends, but I tend to think in terms of the communities, like the online communities that I'm a part of and that I'm in. Um, for a lot of us, tabletop role playing and D&D kind of got us through the pandemic because that was
Mm-hmm.
our way to connect with each other and literally spin a fantasy to, not necessarily think about the world outside for just maybe 2 hours a week. And and yeah, I've also just met so many people, and it is nice to have that in common. And growing up, like I'm like mid-generation X, so I survived the panic of conservatives thinking that D&D was from the devil, and to now walk around with like a D&D logo on, to go anywhere, and everybody's like, like there is that recognition just from random people walking around to be like, oh yeah, okay, D&D, like. Um, you like I've definitely had somebody strangers stop me at like a coffee shop or in an airport because I'm wearing a D&D logo shirt. And it's not that first I'm like, are they surprised that I play this game? No, they're just surprised to see somebody else that they can have that like 30 seconds of nerding out with. And it's always cool. You talk about your campaign, they talk about their campaign, and then that's it. It's great.
It's like a little beacon for other people in the
Mm-hmm.
community. Be like, come
Yeah.
talk to me.
Yeah,
Totally.
it is.
Totally.
And I think Brian brought up a really powerful point about during the pandemic, how so many of us use D&D as that escape. And I think the pandemic was like the extreme example of that. But I think just on a day-to-day basis, I joke about how it's nice to spend 2 hours worrying about problems that I can then stop worrying about for the rest of the week. Like even
Yes.
I've played some really serious games with really deep emotions and where, hard stuff is happening. And it feels so nice to worry about something that is in the end inconsequential. The trials of my character are all storytelling, and I can let it go. And during those couple of hours, I'm not thinking about the real things that I should be worried about. And it's such a relief to have that weight lifted, even if it means I'm pretending to have another weight.
Mm-hmm. Because
No,
there's always a solution, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
In D&D, like you're always going to be able to slay the dragon. You're always going to be able to punch God in the face if you want to. And we can't do that in real life as
Yeah.
much as it would be nice to.
what happens when a character dies though? Because I've also heard of that being a thing. Thankfully, in my like baby campaign, we haven't had that happen yet. But
One of my favorite parts about this fantasy world is that there's a demonstrable place where you go when you die. We
Mhm.
know what happens after. Like, of course, this isn't true for every campaign, but like, you can go, a lot of times you can go to the underworld. That person becomes an angel or something. Like, that's
And,
fun. That's great. That's certainty that we don't have. So,
and sometimes it's also just a minor inconvenience for your party because
Mm-hmm.
somebody comes along and is like, okay, let me just fix that. Okay, come on right
Yep.
back. Okay, there we
Yep.
go.
right.
You're good. You're fine. Have some water.
Necromancers.
You're fine. Yeah, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of games, it can vary depending on the table, and it can vary depending on the game, and sometimes it can even vary depending on the character. And I've gotten to a lot of games and tables at this point in where, especially people have played for a little while, you're just kind of checking in with each other about, hey, what would you like to have happen if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes the person, the GM running the game, if it happens, will check in and be like, so what would you like to have happen? And you can kind of craft from there. And so that's just another way of like, okay, this can be a serious character moment, and maybe I'm ready for this character to move on and I can make a new character and here we go. Or maybe I'm not done with them yet and I want them back and I'll deal with those consequences. So having that flexibility, it's like a lot of things in D&D. There's a mechanical framework to help, and you can kind of pick and choose as you go. But I do think character death is definitely one of those, and where having that talk with at least the other people at the table with you, so that you're all on the same page, is super important.
That's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
really interesting point, and I'm wondering how a GM fits into that. Is that like a decision a GM
Oh,
makes, or is it?
that, I mean, quite frankly, it's going to depend from, GM to GM situation. Everyone's going to be different in how they want to run it. But that's definitely something where, tapping back into what Lauren said, you want to make sure you're communicating with everyone at the table, especially with the GM. Personally, as a GM, DM situation, storyteller, I always give the options. Like, in my mind, death is just the beginning. So it's one of those things where, if the player is totally cool, and I will check with them, is this a character you're okay saying goodbye to? And they're like, oh, I'm all in. This is like the epic end. I have a story to tell. The bards will, sing their praise for centuries on end, type of thing. I'm like, okay, cool, great. Just making sure. But before we even start playing, I have a little caveat where I tell my players, I'm like, look, your character doesn't have to die. Even if you've gone through, like, the 3 death saving throws and all of them are bombs, and you end up, yeah, you roll the 1 for each one, whatever. I have a system, and this is, homebrew house rules thing that I have set up. It's like, your character can come back because of the intervention of, a god in this world. And you might come back either, there's different stipulations, a few less spell slots, your proficiencies drop by a couple of points, so that there's still some relevant consequence for the player to feel for their character. Like, their character has been through something, they lost their life. So they have to play through the part of, like, getting stronger, regaining their knowledge, regaining their endurance. But if they want that character to keep growing in the storyline and not lose their story, that's still on the table for them. But it can still feel like there's an impact to the overall story itself because of it. Because I know a lot of people say, like, oh, if you take away death, you take away the impact. I'm like, no, no. That's a big no. Okay?
There,
Like, go sit down in your timeout chair and have a juice box. That's what you're gonna say.
so it's so funny. There are so many different ways, and maybe that's also when you're thinking about your character, and if it's going to be for a longer campaign, when you're thinking about stuff to them, what does victory look like to your character,
Mhm.
and what does defeat, like, what does losing look like to your character? Because for me, I'm like, an old X-Men comic has Charles Xavier saying, like, murder is for the unimaginative. As a GM, you want to defeat, like, if the stakes are high, you want to defeat these characters. Death is
Mhm.
too easy. Like,
Yeah.
they're not gonna
Yep.
feel that. They're gone. You want them to walk away heads hung low in shame, so that then they go back and figure out, okay, how are we really gonna kick this person's butt?
See, I want them
So yeah.
emotionally torn at my table, like, completely struggling with the decisions they're making.
That reminds me, in
Um,
my campaign, we have a really wonderful GM who just like rolled with us. We unionized our goblins, and
Amazing.
Yes.
it was
Amazing.
iconic. It was so funny.
We love it.
I
It's
that is Sorry, no. One of my favorite things is when you play now with people who maybe didn't grow up with this game and they're just learning about it, but they do bring these very modern, progressive, social justice laden concepts into D&D, which, I'll be real, the book doesn't really have anything for. So it is on the other players and the GM to figure out in the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, like, unionizing goblins, that I would have to roll with that, because how can you not? There's monstrous, and then there's monstrous. Like,
Yeah,
I,
there's definitely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lauren.
I so the clerics in the back of my head are yelling at me if I don't say some things, because I do play a lot of clerics. And cleric in D&D is the cliche healer, and usually the one that once someone a character dies, they're the ones involved in bringing them back. And what I love about character death is it's that moment in where, yeah, a whole bunch of things can happen and it can be very impactful for the character, but it's also a very good moment in where everybody at the table can have that interaction of figuring out what to do next. What's the right thing
Mhm.
to do for this character? What's the right thing to do for this story? What's the right way to go about things? Because I've even experienced the person who says, you know what, it's okay. I think this is an awesome ending for my character, and I'm really happy to let them go. And so above table the way you talk about it, and where, okay, all the players are on board with that. But we're still going to, in the game, let the cleric who's got the raised dead try, because that's part of their character, and now that can become part of their journey. And so sometimes that kind of thing happens. Maybe, whatever the decisions are, death usually is a moment in where the players and the DM can all interact in a really specific way to tell the story, which I find kind of beautiful. And then, yeah, as a cleric player, I do a lot of checking in with a lot of people. And I'll even say there are some rules in the book about what you can do. There's also spells, and I kind of love this about these spells, the ones that bring characters back from the dead. Almost all of them have a stipulation that says, if the spirit is willing, which means you can have, which means the player of that character has agency over whether they come back or not. And you can have that awesome moment of, nope, I'm ready to move on, even if you're doing this. So there's a lot of options, and it's being able to talk over that, even though it sounds so serious. Let's talk about, here we go, my character died, what are we going to do? It's some of the most memorable moments in the game.
Yes. It's always, like everything, it's always used best when used as a something to propel the narrative forward. Like, my brother's been in an ongoing game for a long, long time. His character died, and then another member, he came back as another character, avenging that character's death. It's just like snowballed into, it can snowball and really push the story forward. And the best GMs are always going to check in and are always going to want to do something that is fun or entertaining or evocative for their players. But it's ultimately, because it's a collaborative storytelling game, it's about communication.
Yeah, absolutely. The only time to be concerned about character death is if the GM is saying, I'm going to kill you all tonight. That's the time to be concerned. Like, and they're not saying in the jest. They're like hell-bent on, I'm going to do a TPK because I want a TPK.
Yeah.
That's where you need to be careful.
No, that's
yeah.
Why would somebody do that?
Well, there is, there's.
How long do we have?
Yeah. I have a friend who's an original D&D freak. Like, he does not mess around with 5e. He hates all the new rules. He just likes to start everyone out as like the lowest level, and he's like, I'm gonna try and kill you. And he almost never succeeds because we all can find ways around it. But it's kind of fun to like butt heads with your GM sometimes too, if it's willing on both sides.
Right. That's just it. Like, if it's, everyone in the group's in on it, like, inside joke approach, totally fine.
Right.
Yeah, there are even styles of campaigns called meat grinders where you need to have extra characters on hand because the purpose of the story and the campaign is that you're probably going to lose party members over the course of the campaign. But yeah, I'm okay with, you're all starting at level 1 and life in this fantasy world is a legitimate struggle for you. So yes, things are going to be hard. And yeah, if that's the story that everyone around the table wants to tell, okay. But yeah, I when I think about character death, I always think about something that a lot of us use, safety tools. And one of those things is you're checking in with your players. Usually, I mean, you should always be checking in with your players, but sometimes even before things start, to find out what do they want in the game, what do they not want in the game. And while character death is a mechanically possible thing, it's a great way to get a heads up early on about, okay, this may happen, but how does everybody feel about it? Because then as a GM, you can flavor things so that it's not as dire, like V was talking about, this may happen, but you can come back. You can flavor it in a way that it doesn't mean that it's a dire situation for everyone around the table, because a lot of people, in my experience, are not okay with, even though they know it's possible, they're not okay with losing that character. And they play it appropriately in the moment of, I am absolutely not ready for this thing to happen.
And I think that's a huge, it brings up a really good point about D&D. One of the best things about it is how flexible it is and how you can tell all kinds of different stories. But also one of the dangers is it's very flexible. You can tell all kinds of different stories. I liken it to, you can tell someone, hey, let's go to the movies and go see a movie. Great, let's do that. Usually after that, it's what kind of movie do you want to see? Do you want to see an action adventure
Yep.
movie? Do you want to see a rom-com? Do you want to see, do you want to go to Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which do you want to go to? Both of them.
Right.
Excellent movies. You're going to have a wonderful time, but there's going to be different experiences, and neither are bad or good. But, if you're in the mood for Barbie and you go to Oppenheimer, it's going to be a problem. So a lot of that communication is just kind of feeling out what kind of game am I looking for? What kind of game is the dungeon master looking for? And sometimes that's a wide response. Sometimes it's like, I'll do anything from meat grinder all the way up until this. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm really looking for that. And as long as everybody's on board with it, as long as everybody wants to go see Barbie and you go see Barbie, you're all good. And even if you've got a couple people who are like, well, I do eventually want to see Barbie, but I was kind of thinking about Oppenheimer, but I'll go along with Barbie for now. Like, it's that kind of negotiation. And I think one of the other pieces of advice that I was given early on, which is not every table is for everyone, and you can be friends with someone and not want to play with them.
Exactly.
And that's totally okay.
It's just like being roommates, right? You can have your best friends in the world. Maybe you wouldn't be good roommates. Maybe you're good friends. You don't want to be at the same table, and that's totally fine.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. I feel like a conversation is really helping me understand how I want to play my game selfishly.
That's not selfish.
That's
No, it's good.
Yay. Awesome. I feel like I'm
It's-
hearing D&D right.
Yeah,
You
well,
are.
and
You are.
it's good not just
Yay.
for you and everybody else at the
Mhm.
at the table, but like we've talked a lot about the GM being the facilitator, doing all sorts of stuff. It can sound intimidating, but one of the joys about being the storyteller, the dungeon master, whatever term you're going to use for it, is by having your players tell you what they want, you know what to give them. And maybe you twist it in your own way, or maybe you make it difficult to get or whatever, but it takes a lot of that pressure off if you decide, hey, I really like this. I want to go ahead and actually run a game. It takes a lot of that pressure off to say, well, you're looking for this and you're looking for that, but all of you don't want this. It is so nice to have that to help with crafting something that they're going to enjoy.
Yeah, this is really teaching me to respect my GM's craft a lot more, because entering this with a bunch of brand new players, we had no idea what we were doing, and they've come up with a really incredible story for the campaign, but with apparently there are tangents we're going off of that are not part of the campaign. None of us read the campaign, obviously. I think
That's completely normal. That's
Yeah, that's very
honestly,
normal.
I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
that's pretty much the expectation for many DMs and GMs that I know, where, okay, well, I have these points in mind. I know something's going to happen over here too. Fully expecting it. Don't know what it's going to be, but it is going to happen. I mean, I've had situations where before even sitting down for the first session, because we did a session 0 together, the players communicated with me what their expectations were and what they would like to have done and the type of game they want to play, where I'm like, okay, well, let's remove about half of the combat and put in more role play. And it's totally fine, because you can still get the overall story that you want to tell with the players. It can still be accomplished. How you go about it just shifts a little bit. So yeah, the more you talk with, the person who's running the game, the better it is for them to know this, because it helps with the preparation and getting things set and making sure they're including, the what is it, stars and wishes? That's one of the other safety tools of the players into the game. So it becomes even more personal and something that people want to be invested in doing, as opposed to, that's not how I want to do it, but fine, we'll just go ahead and do it. Because that will definitely start putting a damper on a game real fast. But yeah, no, definitely. If you're finding there are points that are resonating for you, guess what? I'm sure talking with the rest of your table, they're also gonna be like, oh, wait, could we? Yeah, yeah, let's talk about it. And there's never a wrong time to stop in the middle of a game and get meta and talk with each other and figure out what you want to do together. You don't have to be like, oh, well, we have to let this scene play out. We have to let this chapter play out. No. No, you hit the freaking pause button and you talk with each other. There is nothing wrong with that. And you can literally say, pause, time out, whatever you want to say. And then once you have that conversation, once everyone's on the same page, you jump back into it. Let me tell you, sometimes that is the best feeling when you've had these big conversations and you get back into gameplay and everyone's just like, yes, let's do it.
I will say that is one of the few things about performative D&D, streaming D&D, that is hard, is that because you are trying to not just tell a story with your players at this virtual table, but also tell a story to an audience. There are certain things that we try to do, to speed combats up and do other things. And oftentimes those things that V was just talking about, they happen quote unquote backstage. I have a backstage chat. And so as the scene is going on, I'm in a chat over here being like, hey, you sure? Is this okay? Is that do you want to stop this? Do we need to move over here to do? So like all that's happening, but it's not being seen by the audience. And I think that's one of the few things that I wish there was some better way of doing, because that's the one thing that newer players don't get to see happen as often, is that good moment of, oh, are we sure we want to do this? Do we want to do that? How do we want to do this?
Yeah.
That's so true. Or even those moments of like, where are we again? Like, are we in the palace,
what's
or
happened?
are we still in the
Yeah.
cave?
Yep.
Like, that happens a lot. And in a home game, you can be like, oh, right. We're in the palace, we're in the throne room, it's midnight, But when you're streaming, you don't always have the luxury of those moments. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, it's great to have everybody being able to be in the backstage chat, because somebody will always be paying attention to something. And then, because everybody's attention span differs. And yeah, I often, during combat, I often forget like how many people are left. I'm constantly asking like, wait, how many? Like, one, two, I don't know. But yeah, the backstage chat energy is very strong for performing, and it's a funny thing, because that's something I will tell people who are starting doing actual plays. I was like, develop the skill to be able to continue looking at this and continue talking while your fingers are doing this and looking like over here at something, because y'all are constantly, just like you would at a real table, you're constantly checking in with each other. But as Lauren says, you can't, you know, unless something is absolutely wrong, you generally don't stop an actual play or recorded game. Well, recorded games are easier because then you can literally pause and get back to it. But you generally don't stop a stream because of like a major issue when somebody else at the table has always got your back.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of multitasking going on, and that is a big challenge for me. I was wondering, I've been thinking this throughout our entire campaign, is how does the GM keep track of everything, and like what makes a good GM? And I feel like I'm learning the ability to multitask is one major thing, and also communication.
Communication for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I keep a lot of notes. I keep tons and tons and tons of notes.
Yeah.
I feel like every
Google Docs is my answer.
Same.
That part.
And practice, honestly, like it becoming a dungeon master it looks daunting because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes all the time. And being able to do it a couple times, I usually suggest to people, like, find a one shot, find a game that you can play with some friends in like 2, 3, 4 hours, something that's really kind of bite sized that you can get yourself into. Because the hardest thing for newer GMs is not really learning how to GM, but learning about the things you need to do to prep, because everybody's different. Everybody, when you're preparing for a session, everybody's really good at some things and really not as good as others. I cannot come up with names off the top of my head to save my life. Names are the worst. Names for anything, for anyone, anywhere. And so I need to have prepared a list of names that just sits right here. Once I have the name, I can come up with a personality and a description of them real good. So I don't even really need to prep that, but I only learned that after practice. And so that's kind of what helps with the, with how do you do everything? Well, I've learned what I'm not good at and I've learned what I am good at. And so I spend my time focused on names.
Yes, I would say in a very practical way, if you're a new GM, get a list of fantasy names.
Yeah.
You can get them from a
Hmm.
generator, you can make them up beforehand. I like
Mhm.
to use like whatever I do a lot of like inspired by different cultures that I'm maybe not like as familiar with. Like I recently did like a game that was set in like a Poland analog. And so for like half an hour I just went through and like read a bunch of different Polish surnames and then came up with like fantasy sounding first names. And just having that is like that's the GM's friend.
Yeah.
But knowing what you need to do, knowing what you can do on the fly and knowing what you need to prep beforehand is like something that will just come with experience, really.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like these are all skills like, first of all, oh my gosh, I'm living for your cat right now.
Yes, it's so
This
cute.
Like
is Cotton.
that,
he's yeah,
Yep.
Kyle?
his name is Cotton.
Cotton. Yep.
Oh, Cotton.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
Because when he was a kitten, he looked like a cotton ball.
Oh.
So,
I was thinking maybe it was cut from Dodgeball, the movie. Like,
no, no.
Iconic.
He's got the cuddliest cats. They're adorable.
oh.
Yeah, such an apt name. I was just gonna say, I feel like a lot of these skills that we're talking about come with practice. I'm really curious, as like a fairly new player myself, what was the like ground level entry for you? Like, where did D&D start for all of you, and how did you get into it?
Well,
So back in the days of fourth edition, when I was
oh,
real young, I had the red box, but it was during the Satanic Panic, so I couldn't find anybody to play with. So really what happened was I was moving to the Pacific Northwest, and I had started listening to an actual play, a live play, the Acquisitions Incorporated games, which were started literally as, hey, you can listen to people play D&D and kind of get on board. And I'd always been interested in playing, but this was the first time in where like, oh, I can kind of vicariously play by listening to them play. And so when I moved, because one of the things that a lot of your friendly local game stores will have like D&D nights or TTRPG nights. There'll be Adventures League, there'll be organized play, and so you can kind of just show up and say, hi, I'd like to play a D&D game, and you'll find it, and yeah, it could be like just a random table with some random people, but that kind of gets you in the door and it starts to get you a chance to play a little bit. And that's what I did, is I just showed up someplace, and then once I started feeling comfortable enough to run my own games, then I started to become that person who I would talk to my friends and be like, okay, yeah, sure, do you want to play D&D? And just started asking everybody.
I came to it through, I think, a very unconventional means, but so I like have definitely more of a like video gamer background. And so I was hired at Dropout when it was formerly College Humor. I was hired to be their gaming host to do their streams for their nerds only channel Dorkly. And then when I joined their team, I then they were like, "Oh, we have this show Dimension 20." And I was like, "Okay, cool. What's this about?" And so then I started watching that, obviously fell in love with Brennan and all the players there. It was so fun. And then they asked, they were like, "Okay, we're going to try a new streaming show. We're going to do this show called Tabletop, where we took like pop culture shows like Friends and Family Guy and and Golden Girls and turned them into role-playing one-shot games using like different systems, not always 5e, but so I like came to it professionally. They were like, "Hey, do you want to be a professional role player?" And I was like, "I don't have experience with this, but I have like acting and improv experience, so yes, I will." So I think that's a really weird way to come into it, but I feel very lucky.
It sounds like it was meant for you. It was like handed to you on a silver platter. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I was like, I've read Lord of the Rings so many times. I've been trading for this my whole life. Let's
Yep.
go.
And I think it's real nice to see people who are new to the game playing the game and being open about, hey, this is my first time, and so I'm learning the rules or whatever, because once again, that's, oh, I don't have to be an expert at everything. I don't have to have memorized the player's handbook. I can come in and ask questions
Right.
and it's totally okay. So yeah, that kind of experience I think is super valuable for people who are nervous about playing D&D at all.
Yeah.
Brian, what was your
I
origin
I
story?
go back to the red box. I go back to like advanced Dungeons and Dragons in high school in the early 80s. Well, not high school. I'm old, whatever. And and yeah, like I've back then the game was harder to learn because it was pulling a lot more about math, which wasn't like I was good at math, but this is a different way to deal with math. And I was like, eh. Um, I tried running a game once, but the instructions that you're supposed to not tell and tell were not as easy delineated in the book. So
Oh
yeah,
no.
that was a disaster. And and then I didn't find a lot of friendly tables after high school and in college. And then in college I was in college theater, and there was a on-campus gaming group that did live action role play, and they actually reached out to the theater department and asked, "Are any of you interested in this? Because we could use some people with like improv talent to play." And that was Vampire the Masquerade, which is fun and also very, very queer, so a lot of fun. And I realized, oh, okay, so there's things that I could like I can play tabletop role playing games and things like that without it being D&D that I really enjoy. So um I came back like eventually back around to D&D, but through other systems that were again like same thing, collaborative storytelling, a strict set of rules that helps define the story you want to tell, and then came back to D&D. Oh goodness, I think just ahead of the start of the pandemic with coming back to Rivals of Waterdeep, which is an actual play show, and it was also designed for people who like maybe knew a lot about D&D or nothing about D&D or were returning to D&D. So it was really nice to relearn the game through that. And that's also where I got my first experience jamming, which I do not ever suggest to anyone should be on an actual play show in front of hundreds of people live on the internet. But sometimes you're thrown into the fire.
I heard it went pretty well.
It went
Uh-huh.
amazingly well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That was when we talk about having a backstage chat. I co-GM'd with my friend Eugenio Vargas. We had a shared Google document that was pretty much, if we could have just connected it to our brains, that's how fast we were typing back and forth to each other in this thing. So yeah, but it's just I definitely prefer being a player because I love building the story with other people, although facilitating it is fun. But I really do kind of prefer being a player. Also because yeah, sometimes my attention span won't hold, and I end up I'm like I've also forgotten where you all are. Can one of you remind me? Because I don't remember.
I feel like that's how you know it's a good campaign is when you're so
Mhm.
involved in it, you've forgotten the time and space.
Mine was a very long, strange, winding road to get to D&D. Again, because of how I grew up, very traditional Italian Roman Catholic family. I didn't even know D&D was a thing, quite frankly. But as a child, I was a massive bookworm, and I had always gravitated towards books that were fantasy based of these, fantastical worlds with magic and heroes and monsters. Like I went through so many fantasy books as a kid. It was ridiculous. I even still have a few of them. And then I grew up and I had a focus with wanting to get into becoming an English teacher because of my love of books and everything like that. So that's where, collaborative learning and storytelling and everything definitely took a foothold for me. And then at the same time, while in college, I started playing video games, and I didn't know these video games were D&D based. Like, oh, these are just cool to play. I love Baldur's Gate. I love, champions.
Oh, I know the ones you played.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
I had no idea. I was that clueless and oblivious to this whole thing. So finally, when D&D personally got into my life and was directly involved, what pulled me in was the fact that, oh, you can make like little things and paint little things and put it onto the table. what's this about? Because I loved throughout my entire life, like making little things for dollhouses and just, painting porcelain figurines and everything like that. So it was all these tangential adjacent things that I liked and enjoyed in my life that I realized they all kind of pulled together into D&D that brought me into the game finally.
Wow.
So yeah,
like, yeah.
it's
There's a
That's-
no one
name
would have
for that
predicted it.
thing.
There's really something for everyone in D&D. Like, if you're a theater of the mind person, great. If you're a
Mhm.
lovely trinkets person, also great.
Mhm.
There's something
Trinkets. Trinkets are the gateway drug to D&D.
Yeah, have storage space ready. Maybe go to IKEA first and do a little shopping around. Maybe check the Container Store because this is a dangerous hobby. I'm going to tell you, it's not dangerous because of the content. It's just because you're going to want to own everything, every little knickknack, every tchotchke, everything, and
Like
don't
how
ask your
many?
friends how much dice they have.
No.
I was just gonna ask. So how many sets of dice does everybody have?
At my desk
And
right
Like
now.
those big Rubbermaid tubs. I actually had to
Least
buy a
two.
see-through one because yeah, it's a
Wow.
problem. And I don't even play that often. It's just they're nice to have.
Yeah,
They're
I have a
really
few
pretty.
many containers filled with dice and then dice vaults and dice bags and dice trays and I have dice sets. I'm good.
I
And
have
I'm
then
probably still under 100 sets at
Ooh.
least.
I have
And
the
then
giants. Oh yes, I have the big. Oh yeah.
Oh,
and
those
then
are the
people
ones.
always know what to get you for holidays and birthdays
Mhm.
and stuff.
This is true.
Mhm.
That
I
is
even have
true.
some blank
Yep.
dice that I don't know what to do with.
Ooh,
but-
Oh.
that's
What?
fun.
I
Show and
one
tell.
of my projects during the pandemic was I actually tried to reduce my dice collection because I know. I was starting to get to the point in where I felt bad about having dice I hadn't used.
Mm.
So unless I wanted to use them actively or they were like connected to, say, a character I'd played or something like that. If they were just pretty shiny math rocks, but I wasn't actually using them. And especially since I do almost all of my D&D online. And so I'm usually using I'm using D&D Beyond to do the math do the math. And so like figuring out that balance point and being like, okay, well, I've got all these dice and they could just sit here in the Tupperware or all right, I'm going to have to try to and it's still to this day, it's still hard. It's still hard to not hoard all of the dice.
They're just so pretty.
And you get into I've gotten into the metal ones that are the heavy ones that just
Oh
have such
yeah.
good weight to
Mhm.
them.
Gotta have
Yeah.
the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Love
they're
that.
awesome. I think the better question is how many dice sets can you reach within your sitting area right now?
Yeah.
It's arm's length. It's
It's ours.
I'm not. Yeah.
Mine are there, yeah.
Yeah. That's when you know you have a problem when you're just like, oh, I can grab sets upon sets
You
upon
don't-
sets,
you-
no
them.
problem.
You
them. You
stay
never
ready. You
know.
don't have to get ready. Okay.
Right.
It's not a problem, it's a joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at them. I loved them. They're fun.
And they're not
Between-
hurting anybody.
Between this and my Magic the Gathering addiction, my house is full of knicknacks. It's
Mhm.
just, I love it.
Mhm.
I love it.
Brian said tchotchke and my heart grew 3 times this day.
Yeah, my GM shows up to games with a whole pack of things. Like you can
Oh,
hear
yeah.
them coming from down the hall from all the rustling of all the papers and all the little jingle jangle of dice in their kits and stuff. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about the future of D&D for all of you. We've talked about the origins and kind of the lore of your, beginnings, and I don't know, maybe that's a big question, another big question, but what does the future of D&D look like for all of you?
I'll jump in first and get slightly serious. So the Panini as a classical musician was real bad. And it still is. It's still kind of bad. It's still kind of hard to get gigs as a classical musician. And a lot of orchestras were kind of on the edge before that happened and so did not survive. So I've been incredibly fortunate and lucky. I mean, every day, thankful, blessed that not only have I made this hobby of mine into a job that I really enjoy, but it has given me a performance outlet. It's given me a place that I can go. And so I have offline games, but like being able to perform for other people and with friends of mine in a collaborative environment. Because like I'm an orchestral musician. I want to be surrounded by people I'm playing with. I don't want to solo. So for me, as going forward, I feel like that's going to be a lot of my focus is making sure that I've got something there that I can use, because that's been such a huge part of my life for most of my life. And then being able to continue to perform just in this different way has been really, really helpful to my mental health. And so when I think about, oh, what do I want to be doing with D&D, at least as far as playing or GMing in the future, a lot of it really is, oh, what shows can I put together? Who can I go play with? What can I do? Not just to have that experience of playing with awesome people, but to have that experience of performing. So I do kind of have this extra thing that is an outlet for me that I'm so grateful to be able to have in any way, shape, or form.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
It's something I've had to contend with over the last couple of years. So I've gotten very good at talking about it without crying.
For me, I've got a new podcast, which isn't D&D, but it is a role-playing game podcast coming out that we're going to be kickstarting with an amazing cast, that we're going to be kickstarting later this summer. So that's immediately on the horizon for me, which I'm wildly excited about. And then I think I just want to do everyone's show. Like I want to be on every D&D show because it's so fun playing with new people. Like you always learn something from a new GM that you can then bring into your own games, and like, good artists whatever great artists steal kind of thing. Same thing with GMs. Like there's a little trick or whatever. So I just like to learn. I want to keep learning and keep getting better and I think being a better collaborator and listener, which I think spills into I'm also a writer and an actor, so that spills into that. And then it also spills into like just being a better friend, You can always be a little bit better every day. So that's what I want.
Can you plug that podcast that's going to be a Kickstarter, or is that still an NDA under wraps thing?
We don't have the name of it is secret, but it is part of the My First Dungeon many-sided media under that blanket. So follow them on Spotify and everywhere else. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask everybody to plug themselves at the end of this. So this is awesome. I'm glad you brought that up.
I don't know. Probably I definitely overloaded myself on games last year. The long series that I was on, we wrapped, and I kind of pulled back and realized how much essentially it was once a week for months and months and months, and then a break in months. And I kind of realized, okay, it's fun, it's a lot, it's also cutting into my brunch time, but priorities. But I miss it. So I've kind of reduced like the number of things I do per month. I do love to be in one shots, especially for charity. Whether I bring like a regular character or we just do something ridiculous. I have things scheduled like for the next few months, which is fantastic. And I'm not necessarily looking to get into a series, though I never say no to that. It's just because of my day job in IT, what I do, I have to respect those hours. And often what happens is people want to start playing very late in my evening. And I tried playing something and we ended at my bedtime. And then they wanted to do an after show. And you can look back because every recording is me being like, yeah, so sometimes it's harder. It's harder, but I want to keep playing. I want to see, I want to see D&D and other systems evolve and become more more opening, more open, more diverse. Like I want people to look at folks playing these games and say, I can do that. That looks like fun. And I want the games and the shows and the systems to reach people where they live instead of expecting people to necessarily be into it. Because I know tons of people who play now who never thought they would be into D&D,
Hmm.
and yet they each found something in it they enjoy and love. So that's, for the future, that's what I want. I want to see more. I want to see more like groups of all marginalized people doing an actual play because that representation is important. I want the systems to focus on telling any kind of story you want. You feel like D&D is all about heroic story, combat, beat the bad guy, go home. But there are now so many more stories you can tell, even just in D&D, and then other systems that kind of supplement onto it. So yeah, I really want to see more of that. And my selfish wish is to see more of it become a little bit more formalized production. Streaming actual plays is great, streaming like using Zoom and having everybody in the boxes, but I would love to see more formalized production and people who are doing these actual plays with their friends across the world. I would love for every one of those shows to get the chance to be in person together in a studio just once,
Mm.
because we did that
Yeah.
after 15 seasons of Rivals, and it, like, emotionally it was just overwhelming and such a great time. So yeah, I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. Try to I'm trying to be a little more balanced in how much time I'm putting into it.
I
And
think
maybe like Lauren getting rid of some dice. Maybe.
I think there are going to be a lot more actual plays like that, if only from like a practical production standpoint, because like TV budgets and movie budgets have just like gotten way out of control over the past 10, 15 years. And the overhead for making a D&D show, even one that's very highly produced with like great minis and a set and everything, is still way less than one episode of a, multicam TV show. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Ooh, I'm excited about that. Thank you for that little tidbit of knowledge, insider
Ooh,
knowledge.
little Hollywood insider knowledge.
What about you, V?
Honestly, I think D&D will always be a part of my life, because of the fact that it's connection for me. I'm able to connect to people who I have the pleasure of meeting and interacting with and learning how they work and interact and think, and it's just utterly wonderful. But then at the same point, it gives me the ability to help them make connections too. Um, I love when I have met one person from one project and they start talking about something they want to do. And I'm like, I need to introduce you to this person from this other project so the two of you would get along famously. So because it gives me the ability to sort of, I don't want to say matchmaker. That's not it. I'm not looking to make relationships. But I love that I can help others connect the dots and find passions and passion projects to work on together. So for me, it's always going to be a part of what I want to be involved with, what I want to do, and what I want to see flourish because of what it can do for people individually and as groups.
And
Yeah,
I'll just say, speaking as her coworker, because that's what V does for Codename, is literally brings different groups and people together, and she's fantastic at it, and
She's
it's
really, really
amazing.
good at it. Really
And
good.
is you think it's easy? It's just like, oh, I just got to keep in touch with a couple of people. No, there is so much involved, and anything that you see that V has been involved in. She's done 3 billion things behind the scenes to make it happen. And so, yeah, there we go. I thought it was important to say that because she is awesome.
I feel like I can also personally attest to that under this campaign. V has connected me with so many people. Lauren and Brian, you're both here because of V. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's who
feeling
to
very, very
blame.
lucky.
Got it.
Hi, me.
And thank you for it.
Yes,
You're
thank you very
welcome.
much, V. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel like, we've had all this talk of a community and how D&D has built so many incredible connections, and I feel like very privileged to have had this conversation with you and to have shared space with you and for you all to be part of Salal's community. This is really incredible. So thank you all for being here. Before we sign off, I would love for all of you to have the opportunity to plug yourselves, shameless plug time. Where can we find you? What projects are you working on? Fire away.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'm V Muse, she, her. The partner and talent manager for Codename Entertainment, the makers of Idle Champions. And this is Cotton. So you can find me every Friday with Lauren. We do a mini painting stream called Paint and Slay on CNE Games on Twitch. It starts at 12 p.m. Pacific. So come and join us. It's essentially D&D meets Bob Ross and silliness is really the best way to describe it. So you can catch the both of us every Friday doing that. And in terms of other projects, I will be a DM for D&D in a Castle for the July session. However, that is sold out, but I do know that they have the other 2 sessions in August still open. If you want to check that one out, they actually have a US location for the summer, which should be a lot of fun for those who are interested and not interested in going over the pond to the UK like it's been in the past. And yeah, basically just find me on social media, VMuse. There might be an underscore thrown in there somewhere. But that's probably the best way to keep updated with what I have going on and what I'm doing and what to expect me showing up at here and there.
Ooh, I'm so excited for that D&D in the castle.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'll
Awesome.
go next. I'll forge on ahead. Hi, Lauren Urban, she, her, content manager over at Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. You can find me a lot of the time doing stuff on the Codename Entertainment Twitch channel or the YouTubes. I pretty much have my hands in any of the actual content that gets put out there. Sometimes it's behind the scenes. Outside of that, I am lucky enough to have been playing on an actual play that's been going on for a couple years now. And by the time this airs, will have come to a hopefully a satisfying conclusion called Children of Erte, DM'd by the amazing Deborah Ann Wall. So the good news is if you're looking for something to watch that is finished, because I know there's a lot of people who they want to know that the thing has actually come to a conclusion. This will be one of them. I've also got a podcast that comes out every other week called Distinguished Adventurers, which I've literally been playing with some friends of mine since 4th edition for a while. And I love them dearly. And probably the best way to keep in touch with anything I'm doing is to go to my website, lauren-urban.com. I'm making sure the front page of that website has any relevant links to stuff that I am excited about and or social media that is still relevant.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Page. Any pronouns I'll accept. You can find me, as I mentioned, on the My First Dungeon podcast. They do different new gaming systems that they'll do little one-shots or mini arcs of. So I'm on a bunch of seasons of those. You can also catch me doing comedy stuff on dropout.tv. Highly recommend if you want to support a streamer that is really good to its performers. That's a good one and full of comedy content. And then you can catch me streaming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on twitch.tv/jacuzzi tubs with 2 B's. And I've even started doing a Twitch Plays D&D stream where I DM for chat. And it's just me talking for 90 minutes and whatever chat says the characters do, they do. And it's way harder than I thought it would be, but it's also more fun than I thought it would be. So yeah.
That's incredibly creative.
It's really impressive. Wow. Hi, I'm Brian Gray, pronounce he, they. You can pretty much find me everywhere on the internet as Urban Bohemian. Like V, sometimes there's an underscore at the end because I couldn't get the username. But I mostly stream on Twitch on weekend mornings in the Eastern time zone, so I understand that it's way too early for anybody. Put me on and stay in bed. Sometimes I have that very soothing voice that lets you stay in bed while you have your coffee. It's fine. Let's see, I'm not currently on any actual plays, but I was on one. If you were looking for something that has finished, Rivals of Waterdeep, look us up. We are on all the podcasting places and on YouTube, and we had an amazing 15-season run. It was a complete cast of POC for all of our things. We switched off GMs. We all told a really fun story. That was amazing. I do have a few things coming up, so my website is urbanbohemian.com. Keep an eye out there or follow me on the socials as has mentioned, whichever one of them survives the platform
Yeah.
wars.
We are at the mercy of the platform gods.
Mm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Again, appreciate it so much, as this has been so much fun. And I hope you all have a really lovely evening.
You too. Thanks for having us.
This is
Thanks.
wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.